It's Friday, and that means, even though normally we do it on Thursday, we're taking all your questions for the Michigan Mailbag. And man, you guys brought a ton. There's lots of good stuff in here. Let's get to what you want to know about on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. And want to thank all of you who are our everydayers who listen to the show, every single one we put out. You're right on top of it. We love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for making us your first listen. We do appreciate that as well. Let's get right to it. And man, even with my glasses, the glare is not helping here. Let's see if I'm going to have to go other handed. Let's see. Can we? No, that's not going to work. All right. We'll do our best to read from far away. Let's start up with our leaders and best. By the way, we're not going to get to everybody, and I apologize. There's just so many questions, and I deleted the ones that are either disrespectful, stupid, or if you're disrespectful, you're just going to get blocked. So if you're like a Buckeye fan and you're like, I got a good one, you're just getting blocked. It's just that simple. I don't know why you do it. Did you really get that payoff? And it's not because I'm crying about it. I'm I just want peace in my life. All right, Josh Barr at Jadicky. Finish your interview with Shea and thinking about the pressure Bryce will face as the starter at Michigan. He is clearly the most talented guy on the roster, so you think that this might be the rare case where the fan base won't be clamoring for the backup when he makes mistakes. Yeah, and I don't think people were doing that with JJ. That was the first time I kind of really saw that, where people weren't. But here's the other thing about Bryce. There is no backup that you can wish for. Right. And if there was, it's not going to be someone who's better. You know what I mean? At least in terms of on paper. So, yeah, I don't think that you're going to see a lot of people clamoring for the backup. And it was kind of the same with JJ. When JJ made had the Bowling Green game, no one was man, you just feel Davis Warren or Alex Orji or, whoever is going to, would be able to do better. No one felt that type of thing. So I think that's a big thing there. My brother Metal Michael Wolf at MWolf21. Does Drew Aller become the QB to win the big time game so that Penn State has a legit shot at a national championship? I don't know, man. I haven't seen it from him yet. That doesn't mean we can't see him from him, right? Players are allowed to get better. That's one of the things. So I'm not going to rail on Drew Aller. Because players are allowed to get better. We talk about that at Michigan all the time. Same is true elsewhere. Just because he hasn't been that good thus far, I still question him getting kind of raised to that 5-star level. It's really because of the body type and all of that. But I don't know that we haven't yet seen him rise to that occasion. So we'll see. He continues, do you think it's possible Ohio State starts the year 2-2? They lost a lot of talent and have 2 tough games early. Obviously, Texas to start. I can't think of who else is early on their schedule. I mean, anything is possible. Do I think that's going to happen? No. Do I think they'll lose against Texas? That would be my bet at the moment. I think Texas is... even with a new first-year starter who's started games before, it's got, an insane amount of talent in Drew Aller. Not Drew Aller, we just talked about him in Arch Manning. I do think that Texas is just more poised. And Texas kind of has this championship or bust feel just as much as Penn State does in some ways. I don't know where the other game is. But, at some point, Ohio State will come back down to earth for a season or two at least. Even, with a roster that looks good. You kind of looked at, 2023, and in a way that was what they were doing, but they still won all those games. So Jonathan Joseph at JJoseph2156. Do you think that there will be something named after Jim Harbaugh on campus? If yes, what? I'm sure there will be. You win a national championship. He was a quarterback, all the things are in his favor in terms of that. No one's going to really begrudge the way he left or anything like that, which wasn't as bad as like rivals would put it, but still kind of leaving Michigan high and dry at the timing of it, and Michigan wanting him back and he leaves and all of that. I don't think there's any like sour grapes from a lot of those out there. So I don't know, because you already have Schembechler Hall. Like I don't know that they're gonna. It would have to be something new. Like if they maybe like redesign, make a new museum or something, like obviously the Towsley Museum exists, but like I'm sure they'll do something. I don't know what it would be though. Finishing us out in segment 1, and we're gonna try to speed along because there's just so many questions to get to. Spencer Whitmore at Spencer Whitmore, top 5 food spots in Ann Arbor you'd recommend before a game. It's hard because a lot of places I like, and I don't stop for food before games. When I go down there, because I don't want to leave the dog, the Zuri, home alone for too long. But Frita Batidos is always going to be my number 1. I don't know that I've ever gotten it before a game, but that's, I've gotten it, after press conferences when I lived there, all that stuff. BTB, Big Ten Burrito, always like it, not quite the same as it was when I was in college, and certainly cost more. That would be another. And then after that, like, I don't know, because a lot of the places that I used to frequent are just gone. If it's the morning, I would go to, what's it called? The Jagged Fork for breakfast. I ordered so much from Jagged Fork on DoorDash when I finally came in and like, to eat. And they were like, what's your name? For a table, because they were full. Like Isaiah, and they were like, we have to find you a seat. You're legendary. Not because of this show or anything, because at that time, like people had listened to the show. It wasn't on video yet. No one would recognize me, really. It was because I ordered so much from there. So the Jagged Fork. Blimpie Burger is an institution. I've only had it a couple times when I was in college, and that was it. I'm not huge on it. I'll add Fleetwood Diner, which I have had a few more times, and that's just kind of your typical diner food. You can add Benny's to that. Like if you're just looking for like something that's like decent, it's not going to, you're not going to be writing home about it, but, those would be my picks. And I think there's 6 there. I can't think of anything else that I'm like, yes, you have to. Ann Arbor's a great food city, but it's funny because I just didn't explore it as well, in its current iteration. You have to add, obviously, the Brown Jug, but I've never eaten there again before games. It's only random weekdays. Same thing with Charlie's. All right, we're going to continue. We've got so much more. We're going to get to those here in just a moment. But before we do, ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. With Monarch, I realized just how much I spend on DoorDash, enough to power a small country, by the way. Now, thanks to Monarch and all that it does, that number now more resembles like a medium-sized city or maybe like a principality of some sort. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege, or half off first year. All right, let's continue on without delay to the Victor's Valiant. We'll start off with someone who is actually not usually a question asker, but a lot of you probably know TJ Ronan from over at Voice of College Football Michigan show. So he asked season predictions for Bryce Underwood yards. I know a lot of people say 2,600 or so. I'm going to say 3,000. I think they'll get like right around, maybe a little bit below, above. Touchdowns, we'll go with 18. Interceptions, I'll go with 6. Completion percentage, 70. Rushing yards, I'll go 400. I know that's actually pretty high, but that's what I'm going to go with. Rushing TDs, I'll go with 6. Follow up, will he break the all-time freshman passing record? Chad Henne, 2743. Yeah, I do think he will. I think that like that. I've kind of come. You might have noticed on yesterday's show. Maybe it was the show from Monday. Like, what does it mean downfield passing? Like, there's a lot more downfield passing because we've seen like attempts, like shots I think you'll just see him more regularly, and I think he'll hit on a bunch. I think it's going to, because Jim Harbaugh is very famously kind of more of a West Coast offense, and they're just going to get away from that a little bit more. You're going to see more intermediate routes. You're going to see more deep routes, things of that nature. Great Bambino X at Colossus O Cloud X. Sharon's comments on TJ Metcalf are really exciting. If he's really one of the better players on the team, then this defense will be stout. Versatility in the back end could really allow the wing to get creative. If Bryce is as advertised, this is a surefire playoff team, right? I think it's certainly possible. It's going to take more than Bryce, though. It's going to take the offensive line being consistent, right? Like a little bit better, at least, than last year. I'm not saying that like, oh, they were good last year. They weren't. But like a little bit better offensive line with better, hopefully, the running backs are better than Khalil and Dono. No offense to either of them. And then the wide receivers really got to step up as well. It can't just be Bryce is so good and none of those other things work. And I had heard when I was at Sound Mind, Sound Body from a name that all of you know, that like the TJ Metcalf, I was like, who are some of the, it wasn't Sharon that said this, but I was like, who is impressing you on defense? And ran through a couple names and they stopped and said, wait, why did I not say TJ Metcalf right away? Like TJ Metcalf, like that dude is incredible. So there you go. I'm not the one at Cawthorne 9. Should we be more excited to see what the football team looks like or a basketball team? Whichever, man. I think the basketball team's kind of in like this national championship mode already in year 2 of Dusty May. I think, when you get Yaxel Lendeborg. But at the same time, it's like Lendeborg is like an experienced Bryce Underwood in some ways, right? So, I don't know. Yes, just be excited. I think this is the thing I would go with there. Who needs to have a better year for Michigan to succeed, O-line or receivers? I'd say offensive line, because it creates a lot more opportunities, because then you can run the ball. I mean, receivers got to be good, right? Like they can't be making the same types of plays that we saw in the spring game. But again, remember, we didn't really see the A team out there in the spring game very, very much. Like one target, one catch to Donovan McCulley, couple targets to Samaj Morgan. That's an SM name. And Frederick Moore, but not much you could write home about there. So like no Anthony Simpson yet. Little bit of Andrew Marsh. So I think they've got to be the production's got to be better than what we saw in the spring game. Why do you think people are so sure Underwood won't be the next Tua or Trevor Lawrence just as much as he might not be? He just might be. I think it's Michigan's system in large part, because they saw what happened with JJ McCarthy. And what happened with JJ McCarthy is that like we're not trying to like relitigate anything. He won, his senior year, they had those games mostly won by around halftime with a very few exceptions. I mean, same thing in 2022. A lot of those games, like Michigan had them won. There were some exceptions there, right? It wasn't every game. And, they weren't throwing the ball around. Or they watched the Penn State game in 2023 and said like, oh, he can't play, right? Because they handed the ball off because they just want to ignore the fact that he got injured. So I think it's part of that stigma, and also just it being Michigan, and people want to hate on Michigan in general. They for whatever reason, they feel like that gets them more clicks than anything. So yeah, he just might be. I mean, I've heard Trevor Lawrence comparisons since well before he committed, when he was going to LSU. So Clark at Blue for Life 8. Would it be better for Underwood to be the vocal leader of the offense or an older, more experienced player? I think honestly, it's fine for him to be that, because he's the quarterback. Sorry, need a little coffee there. Throat was getting scratchy. Because he's the quarterback. I think that having your quarterback holding you accountable, I think it might actually even be better in some ways, because he's a true freshman, that if like he commands things, and there's some things I've heard that indicate that he's starting to get there. I think that's better, because like that shows like that he's already got like the respect of like people who are older, been around college football longer, that kind of stuff. So I would share, but I don't remember where I heard the one particular story, and I don't remember if it was something that they put out. I just remember someone told me. I don't remember, so it wasn't my intel anyway, so I'll just hold that to myself. No offense to all of you, I'm sorry. Jared Book at Book's World. Not a football question, but I believe you've previously spoken about living in Fenton. That is correct, I do live in Fenton. Have you had Fenton Deli yet? And if so, what are your impressions? Go Blue from the thumb. I think I have at some point. I think not while I lived here. And so clearly it didn't make that much of an impression if I had it. I don't think that they are on DoorDash, which is to their detriment because I spend a lot of time. Like I often like the way, if I'm not cooking, if I'm not like making like my latest thing is I make ribs on the smoker. Now that I got my patio set up in the back, finally. But like if I'm not like cooking something, then like usually like I don't like really go out. I just kind of like what's on DoorDash because I'm usually doing something else. So I'll give it a concerted effort this week to go to Fenton Deli. K-Lob 7-Eleven. Every year there are 2 to 3 players that no one has hardly heard of at the start of the season that overachieves expectations and becomes major contributors as the season goes on. Who are some of those candidates this year? God bless. I mean, so these are ones that you probably, if you watch or listen to the show, no one's going to surprise you. But for like most people, it would probably be like a TJ Metcalf, a Frederick Moore, right? Frederick Moore's done nothing aside from 1 touchdown against Alabama. I think, you know, whether it's Jamar Browder or Andrew Marsh, one of the freshmen there. Some people might consider Jordan Marshall to be on that list. I think mostly, I mean, like TJ Guy, I think is going to have an incredible year. And like, you know, you guys all know the names. Mason Curtis. People know Jair Hill, so that's not a surprise. You know, Zeke Berry. But we'll have to see till fall camp. That might be also a better one of like who's really sticking out in fall camp as well. All right, we've got to put the pedal in the metal because we're always behind, but we've got so many questions today. We're not even near the break yet. Perry Mitchell at Perry Mitchell 08. The front seven is elite, and the questions remain at defensive back, although there are quite a bit of talent there. Do you think that the front seven are good enough that even a less than ideal DB rotation won't be a hindrance? And it's just really there's 2 things there. It's the depth, right? Like I think that they're fine with the starters. It's the depth behind those 2. They love having rotations at corner. I think at safety they'll be fine. And also I think that there's just like there's a little bit of, you know, growing up that needs to happen there as well. So there's that. But I do think that you'd rather have it be that way, strong defensive line compared to really good cover corners, because strong defensive line can and front seven in general, like that can like then you're upsetting the quarterback's rhythm and all of that. Like doesn't matter how open a guy is, he might not be able to hit that target. Whereas, you know, sticky coverage, sometimes, yeah, you're still going to get got because that's just how it goes. So you'd rather have it go that way. Jacob Shavaria, thoughts on Dave Portnoy joining Big Noom? Would love to see you two have a conversation on the podcast. He's followed me on social media since 2016. I've only met him the once. It was very briefly at the Rose Bowl. So that's the only conversation I've had. But otherwise, like, yeah, I'd love to get that to happen. Maybe now that he's with Fox, it'll be a little easier to make that happen. But thoughts, it's funny watching people melt down over it. Like Ohio State people, when people point out, like, you know, you guys have Herb Street, who I think Herb Street is like not really an Ohio State homer. But like, you're like, oh, you guys have had Herb Street and Joey Galloway, Robert Smith, and they're like, that's not the same. Like, in a way it is, because they always like Galloway, Robert Smith. Like, I've met Robert Smith and I've interviewed him in 2019. He was great. But generally, like, when it came to talking about Michigan, they were never on air. They were never like fair about it. Right. So I think that just kind of balances things out a little bit, you know? ZT Jones at _Zach Jones. Other than Bryce, what are the true freshmen that will be the biggest contributors this year? The 2 wide receivers I just mentioned. I would not be surprised if Jasper Parker, the running back, gets in the fold. Nate Marshall on defense wouldn't surprise me. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng as a linebacker, and Shamari Earls at corner. Those would be, and then Andrew Babalola obviously could be one of those guys as well. Generic at ERKJ72. Do you have a favorite Michigan player growing up, or did you rather? If so, who was it? I didn't have like a dedicated favorite Michigan player because like I liked Michigan, but like I loved the Lions more so. It was only in my 20s that I switched and was more college over pro. But Desmond was probably the closest to it. I would run around the house and do the Heisman pose, stuff like that as a little kid. So it'd probably be Desmond. Can't really. I mean, the first Michigan player I can recall is Jim Harbaugh, but I was so young, and by the time that like he was on the Bears, I was just confused. I didn't understand that like they moved on from one to go to the other. Pistons Famo, an idea when we should expect to see Brady Prescorn. I know he's been dealing with some injury stuff, so we'll see. I'm not sure. Also, how many points per game would you say the offense needs to score to get to 10 wins? With the defense, I mean, I think that I'm going to go with like just being safe, 27 points per game. Like, hopefully they'll go well over that. Hopefully, that'll be pretty normal. But I'm sure they'll have some defensive types of games as well as Bryce figures things out. Edwin Simmons at Simmons_Edwin. Happy Friday, my brother in Christ. That was an awesome show on Thursday. I hope you do more shows with past Michigan men. Will we find a linebacker for the 26th cycle? Yeah, like, there's the one kid whose name escapes me from Loganville, Georgia. I don't think they'll quit on Nick Abrams. And, once upon a time, a linebacker committing to Georgia like that, they were going to be pried loose from that. I think Nick Abrams still feels more like a Michigan guy. I don't think they'll give up on him. And I'm sure that there will be some senior evals that kind of happen there as well. How soon will we know about the number one running back in the cycle? Talking about Savion Hiter. Relatively soon, I would assume. But, he hasn't set his commitment date yet. Did you decide on Media Day in Vegas? I did. I'm going to be the man at home. So your man on the ground. I canceled my flight yesterday and I redirected that to the Maryland game. It's the way things work for me is I know we do Locked On and Wolverines Wire through USA Today, essentially independent media. So it's the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Ultimately, I recognized, although I really wanted to go because I wanted to go to the F1 experience. But I tend to lose money going to Indianapolis, let alone flying across the country. But ultimately, the big thing was at this moment, I didn't want to saddle my grandmother with Zuri for 4 days. So that was just the thing at the moment. That was the deciding factor. Mike Matthews at Michigan. Mike, when is Connor coming on the show? Sometime after the NCAA's decision drops. Nunya Biz at U of M fan _for life. Thoughts on Moore getting 2 back-to-back signature wins at the end of the year that essentially took Harbaugh 7 years to get? Does that speak to the state of the program each one inherited? A little bit of luck or the other, and definitely not saying Moore is a better coach. I think that like some of the things were laid bare, like the other team sign stealing. Again, sign stealing is legal, but like Michigan winning the cat and mouse game, they got wise to that to some degree. I think that shows how much the players had bought in. And I think it also speaks to how much more level college football is, as well as the recruiting piece. So it's part of it is the what Sharon inherited. I think that's a big part of it. And, the culture still being intact as well. Why is 24/7 not showing the class with any 5-star after Carter Meadows upgrade? Because 24/7 never had Carter Meadows as a 5-star. On3 did. So that's why. The Rican Raider at Hamstead 87. Curious if you'd ever hire a co-host. I've noticed that one of the other Locked On podcasts split the labor. No, I will not. This has become my primary job. And even though we miss some shows here and there, that's usually due to my own time management and me trying to get used to the changing landscape. But no, there will be no co-host. Michigan question: do you think Michigan will ever update their jerseys with with Adidas or stick with Jordan? I think they'll end up sticking with Jordan as long as they can. I think that'll get re-upped. Finishing out segment 2, Mark Zimke at there's the name. How are hosts on visits determined? It seems like some have prior relationships from high school, etc., but not always the case. I think they just try to do whatever they can to make the match work, right? Whether it's positional, people they know, stuff like that. but otherwise I'm not 100% sure the science behind it. All right, we only have about 5 minutes left and way too many questions. We are going to get to those here in just a moment. You can see that I was very overwhelmed when I was mentioning how many questions. We're going to try to breeze through as many as we can and see how much. Yeah, like 5 minutes looking at the camera screen. I still have to squint. It's too far. All right. The first two are very similar. Chad Holbrook asked, when I said ask for questions, says, does it matter? We all want to know what the NOA has and what's coming, but nothing is ever reported. Smart Arse 22 says, what is in the amended NOA? Why did it get amended in November? Did Stallions turn on the Michigan program for a lighter punishment? No, Connor did not turn on Michigan. That was nothing. It was amended because they added a bunch of the ticky-tack recruiting stuff. That's why. As far as what's the, you say notice of allegations, we're well past the notice of allegations, Chad. We've gotten to the committee on infractions. They had that. You'll notice that nobody has reported on it. There's a good reason why. And we talked about that when it happened. I recommend you go back and look for that show. James David Dixon, will Michigan be good this year? We'll see. I mean, I expect them to be, but it's college football. You never know. Trevor, forgive me if you've done this already. I missed it, but all quarter century team for the Wolverines. Completely understand if it'd be too long of a segment. Yeah, that's a whole segment, not a question. So maybe we'll do a show on that sometime between now and the season. Mitch Lazarus, what are the realistic expectations for Fred Moore and some of the other unproven receivers? With that catch in the LiaQuest Bowl, a sign of things to come, or just a really good catch from an okay wide receiver? We'll see. Like they talk a real big game about him. I think that when they were talking about him being the deep threat, I don't think that was like a proper fit. I think that he could work a lot better in the confines of the Chip Lindsey offense. So we'll see. Mark Shank, I think that's what it says. Yeah. Judging by a lot of our predictions, seems like Michigan fans are projecting us to land somewhere between 10-2, 9-3 record. If you have to give this year's team 2 to 3 losses, who could you stomach losing to? One of the first 3 away games. Any of those 2 or 3. That would be it. Like, no, you don't want to stomach losing to Michigan State, or, one of them coming later with Northwestern or Maryland, and certainly not Ohio State at home. Or, so I would say one of those first 3, Oklahoma, Nebraska, or USC. Will Larrick, who do you see starting left tackle job for this upcoming year? I still think it's Evan Link, but a lot of reports say Andrew Babalola is pushing. I still think it will end up being Evan Link. Do you expect tight end to play a big role in what the Wolverines want to do this year? Yes, I don't think that's changing whatsoever. Played a big role in Chip Lindsey when he was at North Carolina. What odds do you currently give the Wolverines of being Oklahoma in week 2? 60%. Odds NCAA adds to more suspension. 45%. Like it's just below 50-50 in my eyes, but it very well could be much lower or higher, to be honest. No one knows, right? Like they're past negotiated resolution, so who knows? Himi Jarba, where is Michigan in the NIL game? It seems as though Texas and Oregon are at the top. Is Michigan right under them along with some of the premier and Power 4 teams? I'd say so at this point. Obviously, them getting Bryce and Ty Haywood and bringing Nate Marshall back, that's an indication. And they might not necessarily be making all the promises up front. They're starting to they obviously talk about it, but I think that they might swing for the fences a little bit later in the cycle a lot of times. All right, we got 1 minute left. Not even. So let's see what we can do. Jobs finished. Natty champions. Would you rather flip an elite receiver in this class or a proven stud wide receiver in the portal? Personally, I think we need a proven wide receiver in the portal. Bryce needs help now and someone who can just plug and play. I agree with you. Right? You don't want to have take time to develop. I'd rather go get a proven guy. You don't want to waste the Bryce years that way. All right, 2 more. Greg Mitchell, do you plan on having Shea Patterson on again? Bro, we just had him on yesterday. So that was a long enough, like, hey, you want to come on the show? Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do it. All right, I think that's it. Yep. Video's done. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.